My name is Lou Pechi, and I'm a Holocaust survivor. I was born in Zagreb, Yugoslavia, the state of Croatia. And my message to the world is that I want to tell my story so that we learn and not repeat what has been happened before.
In die Tatzen, wer wird Tatzen mich schatzen? Oi, oi, Gott ist größer, hat doch gewünscht mein Häuser, die wir sind gegeben, Häuser, wir sind ausgegeben, die wir sind
You're going to hand me
ausgegeben.
something. Perfect. Dr. Bronner's is coming through with us again. Hello, my name is Sandra Scheller. I'm with the Chula Vista Heritage Museum and the South Bay Historical Society with another episode of Our Lives, Our Future. I'm with an incredible person by the name of Lou Pechi, who survived the Holocaust. We're going to hear about his experiences. I know that yesterday was very touching for you because it was International Holocaust Day, something where people come together and bond. I know how busy you've been. You've been talking with people, reaching out to people. People have been reaching out to you. So to have you on our show is absolutely amazing. Welcome. I'm so sorry I can't hug you, but I can maybe go like this.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to be here, and it's a privilege and an honor that I can talk to you and put this in a video.
Lou, I have this statement that I've made within myself, that if somebody is a Holocaust survivor, they're a survivor. But if somebody writes a book and they notate it and they talk, they become my hero. You are a hero. Do you know that? Because you took the time to dig deep into your soul and to write your book. And I would love to take a peek at it. Can I do it?
Well, this is the book that I wrote. And I wrote it, first of all, I wrote it for myself because I had to retell the story while I was still remembered, while still my mind is working. But basically, I wrote it for my children so they would know what I went through. And I wrote it to the rest of the world so we would not repeat what has happened to me.
Amazing. Can you take a look at it? This is just marvelous. The book is called I Am Lubo, and just so you know, the name Lu or Lubov means love in most of the European languages. Am I correct? I know it's love in Russian.
In Russian, Lyubov.
Lubov.
Lyubov. Actually, my real name in Yugoslavia is Ljubomir, and Ljubo means love, and Mir means peace. So my name is Lover of Peace.
Lover of Peace. That is so cool. Can you say it one more time?
Ljubomir.
Lubomir.
Lover of Peace. When I came to the States, I changed it to Louis, but I would not. I didn't want to leave out the Ljubo, which means love. So that's my middle name, and then Pechi.
Lou, I wanted to ask you before we get started in hearing about you. You got to take a peek at our Holocaust exhibit. Does it meet your expectations? Are you okay with it?
I am amazed at what you have done. And to me, from what I gather, almost single-handedly. So it's quite an achievement. I'm very impressed.
I didn't do it single-handedly. I have the South Bay Historical Society, Chula Vista Heritage. I want to shout out to my video partner that I have, Harry Orgavan, who helped me. Cesar Castro, who's our president, Shelley Rudd, Susan Johnson, Mitch Beecham. Most important, I have to tell, Patty Huffman. I can't forget Patty. My gosh, Harry. Peter Watry. So our organization allowed me to be able to do this. I will tell you that we would never have gotten this off the ground if it wasn't for two people. One of them is Joy Watley. She's the head of our library, being able to allow us to come here and have the interviews. And most importantly, we couldn't have a better mayor than Mary Salas. Mary really helped us get started, helped us get organized. And if you're looking at me and saying, wow, single-handedly, no. My hand had lots of fingers, and I can never forget the love that I've had. Lou, I want to talk about you. What year were you born?
I was born in Zagreb, which is the capital of Croatia, which was at the time part of Yugoslavia, which was considered a collection of Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia, Slovenia, and the different states.
What year?
I was born 1934.
34. Why do you look like you're like 50 years old?
I I don't know. I think it's I think it's a lot because of the genetic. My mother lived to be 93, and she lived till 3 months before she passed away. She was dancing. She was an athlete, and she was just like me. So I'm trying to follow her steps.
That's amazing. 1934, 1935, 1938, 1939. What happens?
Well, as I said, I was this only child, and my life was I lived I was probably a little bit spoiled.
That's what my mother says.
My father was a successful businessman, and we lived in Zagreb, and we were a middle class family, Jewish family, not very religious, even though my grandfather was observant Jew. He put the tefillin every morning.
Wow.
But we were kind of not assimilated. The holidays, we celebrated the holidays.
Yeah.
And as I said, life was good for me. I had everything that I wanted. We vacationed on the coast of France. My father had a car. We were just, life was wonderful.
1939, 1940, 1941. What's going on?
Well, the only thorn.
And mind you, you're 6 years old now.
I was
7 years
about
old.
6 years old, 7 years old.
Uh-huh.
The only thorn in my life was my Austrian governess, who raised me in the Austrian way. And that was, if you misbehaved, you got a good whack on the behind.
Right.
But I learned a lot from her. I learned, I spoke fluent German.
Wow.
Because she spoke German to me. And I also went to a British Montessori school. So
Wow.
I was trilingual when I was 6 years old.
When did the dark days come for you?
When all of this came to an end, my mom decided for Easter holiday to go to Belgrade.
In what year?
That was 1941.
Okay.
To visit my grandfather and my two uncles that had a very successful furniture store in Belgrade. That was when everything came to an end with the bombing of Belgrade. 6 o'clock in the morning, I woke up. I ran to the balcony because there was a noise coming from outside, and I looked up in the sky, and there were hundreds of, or I say hundreds, but all these airplanes coming through. And I've never seen airplanes as a child, as a 7-year-old. And I called my uncle. I said, come out here, come out here. I woke him up, basically. There are airplanes out there. And you could see the airplanes just flying and dropping the bombs. Well,
Oh, jeez.
my uncle, being an reserve officer in the Yugoslav army, he says, we got to go into the basement. So my mom right away went to the elevator and says, no, we got to go down the steps. We went to the basement, and all the people were already there. And you could see them all huddled in the coal bins that all the buildings used to be heated by, and we were hearing these explosions, and then we were huddled there for maybe 15, 20 minutes, and everything became calm. They were done bombing, and we came out because I had to use the bathroom, so my uncle took me out, and I looked around, and I could see the building across the street. It looked like a dollhouse with beds hanging out, and there was a horse that was killed from the bombing, with its guts all on the street, and I was just very frightened. And my uncle just hugged me. He says, "This everything is fine. It's going to be fine. Don't worry about it." Well, the problem was that my uncle had to report to his unit. He got orders to report to the unit to defend Yugoslavia from the Germans. So he took off, and my mother, they said, "We got to get back to Zagreb. That's where we have to go back." And so we put all our clothes in a rucksack, and she put a bandana on, and we went to the railroad station to catch the train. Well, what happened after the bombing? Everybody wants to go someplace else. So the railroad station was packed with people. Well, my uncle still didn't. He had a uniform on, but he didn't report yet to his unit. And we found a train, and he pushed me through the window to save a space for my mom, who was trying to get in through the regular door. And I saved the seat, but the people were coming in, and I kept saying, "No, I'm saving the seat for my mom." And they said, "Move, kid. You can
Stand up, yeah.
Get up." I said, No. And finally, my mom came through the door, and I was relieved. And she had a seat, and the train started moving, and off we went toward Zagreb. Well, the people in the compartment, they started opening up their packages of food. We started talking to each other, and we get to know who the people were. And then suddenly the train came to a screeching halt, and everybody started looking, what's happening? And the conductor came out and announced, said, "Sorry, the train is not moving. The bridge has been bombed." Well, my mom, being resourceful, we got off the train. She started talking to people, and she found out that there was a barge that you could take a couple of miles down the river. You could take a barge across the river, and you had to pay the fellow some money. Well, we walked there, took the barge across, and then we went back to the station on the other side of the river and tried to find out if we could catch another train that's going there. Mm-hmm. Well, there was a freight train that we found out. A freight train. And we took the freight train to Zagreb. Well, we got back to Zagreb, and should I continue?
Oh, please.
Okay. We came back to Zagreb, and luckily the freight train station was almost across the street, very close to our place. The regular station was much further. So we got off the train and walked to our apartment. And my mom rang the bell because she didn't have the keys, and we had a maid. And the maid opened the door, and she says, "Madam," she says, "I'm so sorry. I had to let him in." And my mom says, "What? Who did you have?" She says, "There are 2 German soldiers sleeping in your bedroom."
Right now.
Right now. And my mom, never had anybody in our house. I mean, we were no
They
strangers.
took over, but they kept the
Yeah,
maid.
and she asked her, she says, why, what? She says, I had to let him in. They had a paper that said that they have the rights to our apartment. So my mom says, oh, just a minute. She says, she says, I'm gonna go call him. And she says, no, wait. So she went into the maid's room, and she had a little bathroom, and my mom took off her bandana, fixed her hair, put her lipstick on, and again, and then she said, okay, now we'll meet. And the Germans, there were two officers actually that were there. They came out, but we all spoke German. My mother spoke fluent German.
Right.
I spoke fluent German. So one of the officers came out. He says, "Madam, she said, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. We're just soldiers. We're going to the front, to the Greek front. We will be here only just one day. We can move to the. We had a study. We can move to the study." And my mom says, "No. You stay where you are. We'll be in the study."
And you're all in the same house
In
with
the
two German
same
soldiers.
So,
Lou, does it make sense?
well, does this whole thing make any
Does
sense?
this whole thing make sense? Absolutely.
So anyway, but I noticed that they had this big rifle against the.
The bayonets?
No bayonet, just the rifle
a
leaning
rifle,
against the two rifles that they had with them. So I ran to my toy chest, and I picked up my rifle.
Oh.
And I came out and says, I have a rifle too. I was only 7 years old, so to me, I was.
Lou.
My mom was petrified, but I was all excited about having soldiers in my house.
German
I didn't-
soldiers
I
in
didn't-
your home, and you've got a rifle.
So
Lou, you can't make this up.
no. So anyway, he looked at me. The soldier, the officer looked at me. He says, that's no rifle. He says, here, and he took the rifle and he gave it to me, and I held it, and I said, it's so heavy. So he took it away. He says, I guess you're not ready to be a soldier.
No,
So
but he was nice to you.
oh.
And did he
Well,
know that you were
wait.
Jewish?
Let me finish the whole story.
Oh my God.
So anyway, just for fun, he took his hat. He found the hat. He says, "Okay, why don't you try this?" So the hat. He put the hat on my, and it fell
Of
down.
course.
So yeah, my mom started laughing. They started laughing because there's a kid, So he says, you remind me of my son Hans. And I said, oh, Hans. He said, just a minute. And he took his wallet out and pulled out a picture of him. He says, this is Hans. This is my wife. I don't remember Trudy or whatever. I don't remember the name. And I looked at him and says, ooh, can Hans play with me? And he says, well, maybe someday when this war is over. What I mean now as an adult, what I realized, he was just like us. He had a family.
Yes.
He had to leave his family. He was going on in a war that he didn't want to be in. And I realized how close, how similar we are.
Yes,
Okay?
absolutely.
So anyway, they left the next day.
Did they know you were Jewish?
They knew, sure they knew.
Oh my God.
Well, that's one of the things that, this is the adult speaking now, but I realize that people many times have asked me, do you hate the Germans? And I said, how can I hate Germans? I mean, it's a country. There were bad Germans, there were good Germans. They're good Jews, they're bad Jews. We're all alike. We are the same. We have the same desires. We family. We want peace. We want to be comfortable. We have the same desires, but sometimes we get misled.
And your father again was where?
Okay, my father. Okay, this is another story. My father was recruited to the Yugoslav army, so he was a plain soldier. He wasn't an officer or anything, so he wasn't there. He was in the service, and so anyway, the Germans left, and then eventually my father came back. And he had his head was shaven, because in the Yugoslav army the soldiers, they just shaved all their hair off.
They didn't have time to.
So they don't have time, and anyway, he came in a uniform, and I was very impressed that he
Sure.
he had the Yugoslav uniform, but he took that off very soon. Well, so things then started. That's when things started going down. Okay, the first thing, and I tell this when I talk to the kids.
Sure.
I always ask him. I said, so who do you think they registered? The Jews had to register. That's the first thing. And then the law came out that Jews could not be on the street after 9 o'clock. Well, they had a problem. What do you think the problem was? The problem was they couldn't tell who was Jewish.
Yeah. Yep.
So the next thing what happened is they had to put a label on who is Jewish. And what they did is we had to wear the sign Je. And this is a Z with a hook on it. And Croatian is a phonetic language. So every sound has a letter. So if we didn't have the little hook on the top, this would be a Z, but Je is a Je, and Židov is Jew. And this yellow sign kind of symbolizes the Jews, and the black Je on it. Now, let me ask you a question. How much do you think this is worth?
Right now?
No. What did we have to pay to buy this sign that we had to wear? We had to pay, the Jewish community had to come up with about 30 ounces of gold. So this thing even made out of...
labeled?
This thing made out of aluminum that's not worth a nickel.
A penny.
A penny. We had to pay in gold 30 ounces
of gold to be able to get a label.
And you had to wear this, because if you didn't have this, you could get shot right on the street.
30 ounces of gold.
Right. So my father,
It's got to come to like $50,000-$60,000.
Yep. Well, I don't know what the gold was worth then.
May I take a peek at this?
Sure.
Oh my Lord. I have never seen one of these. I have never held one of these.
My mom saved that through all the things that she went.
Was it for the family or each person?
Each person. Well,
my gosh.
So my dad came and brought these home, and I said, "Where's mine?" And he says, "You don't have to wear one." He says, "I want to wear one. I'm a big boy. I want to wear one." So I went to my little toy chest and my stuff, and I took a piece of paper and I cut the little round as much as I could circle, and I put the Je backwards probably. I don't know. Of course, I didn't save it. And I put it on, and I came out and see, I have my own sign. And my dad ripped it off, and I thought, oh my God! I started crying, screaming. I says, "Dad, why did you rip it off? I wanted." He says, "You don't have to wear it." So anyway.
My gosh.
So from there on, things got worse. One of the things I didn't mention about my father.
The year is 42? 43?
This was 41, 42.
42. Okay.
And things got worse. Number one, they arrested my dad. Well, first of all, they arrested things. This is one of the things that people have to understand.
Lou, it doesn't make any sense. You have this symbol. Your parents have paid 30 ounces of gold to be able to wear this aluminum thing. They're wearing it, but then everybody knows that they're Jewish. If they didn't have it and they're on the street, they could be shot.
They could be shot. That was the law. He says, if you don't wear this and you're on the street after 9 o'clock, we have the right to shoot you. Of course, they would take you to the jail, to the camp.
Right. But as far as here you are a child, and your father is saying, nope, you don't need it, you're not going to wear it. Why?
Because the children didn't have to wear it.
Okay.
It was adults.
Oh my
Okay?
Lord.
Things are gradual. Okay, so now people said, "Oh well, what do I care? I'm not out after 9 o'clock," and so I wear the sign. Big deal.
Right, but your father could now be out at 9 o'clock and wear it, or no? All Jews have to be in and you better have a symbol on.
Yeah, but a lot of people said, "What do I care? I don't go out after 9 o'clock. I stay home."
Right, I do.
So, but as I said, things were gradual. So this was one thing. Next thing you said, they came with a law. They confiscated all the radios. Radios
were the bloodline. The bloodline where you knew what was going on having a radio.
Well, that's exactly what they didn't want to know what's going on. They had control. They wanted to have control over it. So the radios had to be taken because in those days there was no commercial radio. It was state-owned, and you had to register a radio, and you get a certificate. You had to pay a certain amount of money to have a radio. Then they had to confiscate. They said all the Jews had to turn in their cars. Well, my dad, he was a very mild man, but he had this mean streak, as far as I remember.
Sure.
And he told me later on, he says, because I wasn't part of it, but later on after the war, he told me, he says, I wasn't going to turn in my car. He says, I'll be darned if I'm going to give him my car. What he did, he drove it up. There's a mountain next to our town. He drove the car up there, put it in gear, and let it go over the hill.
Lou, we have to make a movie. We have to make a movie.
That's what everybody tells me.
Lou, we have to make a movie. This is crazy.
I know it's crazy. It gets crazier.
Okay.
It gets crazier.
Go, Lou, go. Tell me.
So anyway, so they first thing they arrested 18-year-old. You know, if you were a youngster, those were the people that report to labor camps to help our country in the war effort.
Right.
So they arrested my cousin Srečko, my mother's sister's son, and her husband, who was in his 30s or 40s. And I actually have a picture of him going to the labor camp. It wasn't a labor camp. It was Jasenovac, which was the biggest concentration camp in Croatia. He never came back, and his father never came back. So then they said, Jews can't travel. Oh, I forgot. They arrested my father next. But my mother tried to get him out of the jail, and she went to he was doing a lot of business with he was a import-export tax and had a business, and he worked a lot with Germany, who was working with Croatia, and so she went to his associate, the German associates, and that's what my mom was, the story that she tells me. She went to him. She says, "You got to help me." He says, why? What? He says, you got to get, they arrested my father. You got to help me get him out. He says, well, he says, I could write you a note that I need him to get something out of customs, and they can give you a 24-hour pass. And he says, please do that. So he wrote that. He says, but I'll tell you one other thing. He says, get out of here. Get as far as you can. They will kill you. Because he knew what was going on.
Of course.
But he was another one of the good Germans that said, but and he
You
told
met some really nice Germans along the way, Lou.
Yeah.
Between people invading your house, right, sleeping in your room, and I just happen to be German, wake up, and then hearing this story.
I was lucky.
Holy, amazing.
So anyway, and then he told her, he told her, now if you mention my name, I'll deny that I know you. I'll
Absolutely.
deny. He says, because if I do, it's going to be my life.
My head.
My head. So
Yes.
she got the request, went to the jailhouse and got my father out.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
they let him
For 24 hours.
24-hour pass. So right away we moved from our apartment to my father's, my grandfather's from my father's side, who was on the other side of the town. And so my mom says, well, I guess since they don't allow the Jews to travel, we found out that if you were Catholic, you could travel. And we found out that some people were already in Italy. If you went to Italy and you were Catholic, they wouldn't turn you over to the Germans. They wouldn't turn you over to the Germans even if you weren't Catholic.
Right.
The Italians were.
You
they
just had to
did-
get across that waterbed.
You had to. So she says, okay. So here we are trudging, my mom, my dad, and myself, to the local church, and we converted to Catholic just so that we could get the certificate. Now my mother and father converted to Catholic and got their certificate right then and there. And then 10 minutes later, I got converted to Catholic. So my certificate said father and mother Catholic, so which was
Nice.
which was a double cover.
Right, which is extra for you.
And they decided.
But your father never wore that again, right? It was always.
Oh no.
Now it's in hiding,
Now it
it's-
was getting shot, but
Yeah, if you wore that.
it didn't go out after 9 o'clock, of course. Anyway, so they started getting ready to travel to Italy, and they were telling me, we'll send you over to. I had an aunt that lived in a little provincial town, Brod, and she was married to a Catholic, to the tailor, little town tailor.
I love it.
So they were going to send me, and I wanted to go with them, and they said, no, you'll be safer there. You know, and my aunt, I had two cousins, twins, boy and a girl, Hansi and Greta, Hansel and Gretel, they named them. And they
love
were like
it.
14 years old. I was 7, and so they shipped me there, and my mom. I remember my dad getting ready. She had this fur coat. In it was expensive fur coat. Inside were dollar bills sewed in. You know, not dollar bill, but
Sure.
$100 bills. Money sewed into the lining.
Into the lining.
I watched my dad take the shoe and take the leather heel off.
The heel and the sole.
Cut the middle of it and put gold coins in it, and then pour wax and close it again. I watched him at my grandfather's do it. And so here they are, and they got on a train. My aunt Babush, who lived in that town, came to pick me up, and they left the next morning, took the train to the border town, which was a river. And the town is called Fiume on one side and Rijeka on the other side. Rijeka means river in Croatian, and Fiume, and in between is a river. Now, I'll diverge a little bit to my mother's story. because this is another thing that's quite
in
unusual.
the works of a movie.
In a movie. They come to the border town, and the carabinieri, the Italian police, comes out, and my mom, well, she was in her 80s when she told me this. Well, she told me the story when we got together again, and she said, and these are young, good-looking guys. She said, and they said, we got to go take you to Bukuritsa, which was a concentration camp that the Italians had. There was an Italian concentration camp. And she says, I would have gone any place with those guys. But she says, no.
Lou, oh my God.
We'll get off the train. So she got off the train, and she says, now how do we get across? So she went down to the port, to the docks. It's a small town, they have a fisherman port. It's a fisherman town. She went down and she asked one of these, could you row your boat out and then bring us on an Italian side? He says, yeah, for 5,000 or whatever the money they exchange. They agreed. And she says, and this guy is rowing her, my dad with the suitcase, my mom with the suitcase with the fur coat.
With the fur and the heel with the gold. Oh my God. Oh
She's sitting there, and it was summer. It was July or something. I forget when they were. And she says, I was shivering. I was so scared. He drove her, he rowed the boat out to the sea, and then he came to the beach on the other side, and there are people on the beach swimming, and there's this woman gets out of a car
with a
fur coat with the suitcases, trudging in the sand with the high heels. Anyway, they caught the train on the other side and took it to Treviso.
You remember all this?
Well, I have pictures of her with the
yeah.
fur coat, with my dad standing there. That's a story that she told me. What I remember is coming to Brod. So I came to Brod to my aunt. Of course, she warned me, don't tell anybody you're Jewish. Don't you dare say, because it's. And she enrolled me actually in the first grade. Now, at that time, they haven't taken all the Jews. The women's and the older people were still there, living there. But they took the young men, and they were slowly starting to take the older people until they were ready to, process them. Things weren't, as I said, they were gradual. So I went to my first grade class, and I remember like today, the day that I came in, and the nuns were teaching at that time. The nun saying, "Well, we start our class with prayer." Okay, all the Jewish kids stand up there against the wall, and and of course I sat there, and I was looking at the kids, and I said, "Well, what if they want somebody tells he's Jewish too? He's Jewish, and I just didn't say it. But anyway, she led us through the prayer, and I didn't even know the prayer, so I kind of pretended to mouth it, and I was so torn because I felt I should be up there with the other kids. The feelings were just like
the guilt that you feel.
The guilt that I felt
in your soul.
And guilt and jealousy because I wanted to be with the kids. It was a very mixed feeling that I had.
Absolutely.
So I finished. I started taking catechism. I went to church every Sunday. I went to First Communion.
You lived there.
I lived there.
You lived at the school.
I lived out in the open as a Catholic, and I went during the week. I went to catechism, which we had to go get ready for the First Communion. I went to the First Communion.
I can only imagine your first confession.
Oh.
Forgive me, Father, I have sinned. I am Jewish.
I will. I think it's. I am. I'm. I went to the first confession. Now I'm 8 years old. Okay, now at 8-year-old, I learned. I said, Father, I've sinned. I've lied 3 times. I've stolen 2 times, and I forget what else. I wanted to have something that my cousin had that I would love. I coveted that, or I learned all of these things that you had to say. And the next question from him now, he says, "And did you play with that thing in your pants?" And I didn't know what he was talking about. No. So he says, "This is honest to goodness. This happened. I'm being."
Let me get my seatbelt on.
So I went to my cousin, who was like 15 or 16. I said, what does he mean by that? You know, he says, "I'll show you." So he showed me. Okay. So I found out that this what I had was not just to pee.
Oh my God, Lou.
Anyway, so life actually, if you get right down to it, my life in Broad was wonderful. We were running around. I was running around with the kids, around with just a bathing suit. I went swimming with my friends. I had my cousin, who I was always running with, his bigger boys. I was the little kid. They would set me up to do their chores, you know, the things that they couldn't do. They snuck me one time through the window to the priest's cellar to get some of the ham and wine, and I would pass them on to the window, and then I would get up, and they were, you know, they were mischievous.
Lou will do it.
Lou will do it, yeah. And but one of the things that I remember, and this is kind of just give you a feeling. I don't even know if I put it in my book, but right next to my aunt's house was a Hasidic, an older house. Actually, almost looked like a. From what I remember, it was almost like a
Heather.
It was an old house. It was extremely old, and I never saw the Hasidic people because they were gone, and it was empty. And as kids, we went in and played, and there were these pieces of paper with Hebrew writing, and I didn't know what Hebrew writing was at that time, and it was so strange. They almost, as a kid, they almost look foreign to me, because I wasn't part of it. You know, in Zagreb we didn't have Hasidic people, but this was a family, a Hasidic family that got totally
Hasidic meaning very religious.
Religious,
yes.
Yeah. And what they had in the house, what was left, I mean, it was all torn up and taken apart, you know, abandoned basically. But it was so strange. I still remember that feeling. That feeling that it was, to me, it was like getting into a very strange environment. So moving right on, I started 2nd grade. One evening, we're sitting at the table and having our supper, and there's a knock on the door, and my uncle Stefko says, "Yes, can I help you?" Says, "Police." He says, "Open up." He says, "Police? What do I need police?" He says, "We have a warrant for Lubov's arrest." And he says, "But he's 8 years old." He says, "What do you mean for his arrest?" He says, "Sorry, sir, we have a warrant. We're just following orders." And my aunt says, "Well, what are you going to do?" He says, "We have to take him to the local jailhouse." So my aunt says, "But why don't I go and I'll act as a hostage? It's just a kid." He says, "Sorry, ma'am, we got to take him." So the 2 guys, and they were plain clothes people, just in suit and a trench coat and whatever. I don't remember that too well, but anyway, I marched with them to the jail. And the first thing they did is they sat me down on this chair in this one room, and the barber came and shaved off my head, because I guess they didn't want to get any lice into it. And instead of putting me in the men's cell, they put me in the women's cell. And the women, right away took care of me. They put a blanket down, they made me lay down.
Were you the only boy?
They had some kids, some other kids there. It was a different family. They were the last of the
Did
Jews.
I miss something? What did you do that you were being arrested?
I didn't know at the time what I did. But they must have found out that I was Jewish. And the certificate didn't mean anything, because if your parents were Jewish, if you converted, didn't count. If you were married to somebody,
What I'm
didn't
saying,
count.
how did they find out?
Until today, I don't know for sure. The way I could be is I was running with the kids, and we went swimming. And going swimming, we were naked. So they might be that they found out that I was different, and they might have said, oh, he looks, or mentioned it, and could be, I don't know how they found out. Okay, for sure, this is how I'm surmising that they found out. So
You're
anyway,
not with your mom. You're not with your dad. Your parents are gone. You are finally in a place where you feel some ground, and now the rug has been pulled out from underneath you.
That's right, and that's what has happened. So anyway, I fell asleep. When I woke up, I remember there was my backpack with my aunt, brought it in, and she put some toys in there, that my favorite soldiers that I had, little soldiers that I played with, and some food and some other clothes, change of clothes. And then and this is one of the things that I very vividly remember. That it was Sunday. I guess this must have been Saturday, and then Sunday. We heard some singing and music coming out, and everybody ran through the window, and I started yelling at them. Oh, I was supposed to be in this procession. This was a religious procession. My cousin is marching in, and could I see? So one of the women lifted me, and I grabbed the bars of that thing. And I'm telling you this story because I used to tell that story many times, and it was like a black and white movie without sound. There were no feelings when I would recount it. But moving forward, I wanted to be out there. I wanted to yell at her, Greta, I'm supposed to be in this procession. Because I could see her walking, and she saw me, and the tears were running down her face, but I couldn't. Another sound could come out because I had my head shaven. I was ashamed of it. I was afraid that if I yelled, I would. It was a feeling that stayed with me for 40 years. I didn't realize it. I did not know it was somewhere in here. Actually, 40 years later, I had to go to therapy because I was married at the time. I had 2 lovely kids, and I wanted to leave my wife. And what did I want to do? I wanted to move to an apartment. What did that apartment look like? Just like that cell. And it had curtains on it, okay? Were high windows with curtains. What was behind the curtains? The bars. I had to go and I had to re-experience that moment. So even what I learned from that, until I re-experienced it moment, I had to get hold of that anger, that anguish of injustice. Why was I here? because actually in that cell, even though I felt safe, it was now I can, with my adult mind, I can process that again. And why would I leave my wife? I mean, we've been 60 years, we've been married, have wonderful kids, a boy and a girl, Nina and Tony. But it was buried in me. And all these years
and
I
you
didn't know.
want to take her down that road. That was your road. So by you re-experiencing and saying, I need to do this for me.
For me, I had to do it for myself.
Right. It was, you went there by yourself. You had to finish this by yourself.
That's right.
And then you could come back, and whatever you had inside, you could leave there. It's what Dr. Eva Eger says, that sometimes the worst part of me is in Auschwitz. Ruthie used to say the same thing. The worst part of me is in Auschwitz.
It was.
And you had to come to a realization that the worst part of you would be in this cell.
Enough of carrying this in me. I
Wow.
did. It weighed. I mean, it weighed. It would have destroyed my life if I didn't
Do this.
do this. But I realized that, and this is, in some way, it realized that I love my wife.
Did you take your wife on a honeymoon after that? Did you say, that's it, we're getting out of here? You and me. I'm taking you where you, Carlton Ritz, Valencia, go ahead.
We did in some way. I mean, we moved a lot, but she was always.
But Lou, every day you have appreciation and love, and you know where you came from, and that is what makes you a hero.
Well, that makes me free.
Yeah.
That makes me free. That's when I re-experienced that.
Wow.
I was freed.
Wow.
So, continuing on with the story.
Sure.
And I'll come back. But the next, so that day after this was over, the guard comes in. He says, "Lubo, or who's Lubo here? Come with me. Take your backpack." And he brought me back to the same place that I was sitting. When I came, he set me on the same stool, and I sat there. And then the chief of police came out. I didn't know, but he was in a uniform, and he had a mustache, And I was afraid of mustaches because my barber before, when I was a kid, would always have a mustache, and he would always, when he was sharpening the razor, he would say, "Oh, I had a bad day." He says, "I just slipped and cut somebody's ear off." And I was like 4 or 5 years old, and here I was, all foamed up with a thing. And
I love my job, okay? I just want you to know I love doing these things. Oh my God, each one is so unique. Oh my God.
So here I was sitting on that, and I
This
said,
needs to be a movie. This has to be a movie. Oh my
I'd love
God.
to make a movie. Anyway, so at that point in 4 years, I said, I'm not chancing. Today was a bad day for him. I'm not chancing.
Sure.
I got off the chair and I ran out of the door. This was the barber shop was in the middle of the town. Zagreb, and I'm running like crazy, little feet. And the stupid barber, not thinking, he's holding the thing in there and he's running after me. And my dad is running after him. And
oh my God.
And my dad ran faster and caught me and hugged me, and
So, no, we're not going. My God. Can you imagine going to a barber shop today or a beauty shop, and there's a guy with his leather thing going, "Yep, this is my first time to." What?
Well, they.
Oh my God.
That was the humor, that they had, the barbershop
and you
humor.
remember the humor. That's just it. You will remember the
I
humor.
remember that. I remember being friends with a traffic policeman.
So let me ask you: you were in the jail. The chief of police has you there.
he came out.
And he says, and basically you're free to go?
No,
trying to
this is
understand.
what I remember. This
Okay.
is what I remember. So I'm gonna tell you what I remember as an 8-year-old kid. Okay, because that's what I can see it. I can basically see the. Well, anyway, he says, do you know who I am? And I said,
Well, it
you know,
says chief of police.
well, he says, I'm the chief of police, and I know what's happening here and throughout the whole town. This is my job. He says, now I'm going to tell you what you do, and I'm not even saying anything. He says, do you hear me? He says, I can't hear you. Yeah, yes, sir. You know, I was scared. I was petrified. He says, you sit on that chair and you count to 10. Can you count to 10? Yes, sir. He says, you count to 10. I'm going to leave. When I leave, you start counting. And when you reach 10, see the door there? You walk to the door and you go home. You don't dawdle. You don't go any other place. You walk home. You don't run, just walk. And so he leaves, and as he left, I still remember he winked at me. And he said, in the book I say, good luck, kid, okay? But I remember him winking at me. So I go, 1, 2, 3, 4, as fast as I could, pick up my back rucksack, and I run like hell to my... And of course, my aunt was happy to see me.
Of course.
And just
How did you reunite with your parents?
I'll continue. So my uncle right away got. I guess it was all arranged. There was one of the peasants that he knew, and I could say peasants from another little village, was there with the horse and the wagon, the 4-wheel wagon with the. And they put me in the wagon, they covered me with a blanket, and he drove the wagon with the horse to the village. And I stayed at his house, and I ended up playing with the kids for about 2 weeks, till things calmed down. And after 2 weeks, they found a lady, a German lady, okay, who had a son about my age, and she agreed to take me across the border. So she came, they finally brought me back, and she took me on a train to Zagreb, and from Zagreb we took a train to Fiume, and there she turned me over, we crossed the border, I crossed this border, and my name became Vlado Miller. Miller was her last name. So I became Vlado Miller, her son. And she crossed me over the border. Now, my parents were not allowed to travel because they were in what they called in Italy, internati di guerra. Mm-hmm. They were interned because of the war. So they sent a priest to pick me up. And here's this priest, I still remember he bought me a little sandwich or something to eat, and he had a drink. And he quizzed me about the catechism. And there's this little kid answering all his questions, the Lord's Prayer, what do you do? And he got such a kick out of it, out of this little Jewish kid that knew all
knowing everything that was, Catholicism.
Catholicism.
Wow.
Anyway, he brought me to Treviso, and in Treviso, my mom and my dad and my uncle was there, one of the uncles, and another family that was there. There were like three families in this villa, kind of a place we rented, and that's where we lived. I'll go through it fast forward because
Sure.
It's going to be very quick. We had to report every Sunday. One Sunday we report to the chief of police. She says, "You're free." My mom decides, okay, we'll go to Venice. We're in Venice waiting for the Allies, because she felt the Allies would be coming there very
Right.
quickly.
Your mom was
And-
brilliant.
Well, she was a gem.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's another story.
Uh-huh.
She deserves another book, and I did write her book.
Oh.
But anyway, that's another different story. So anyway, so in Venice, we go to the Piazza San Marco and sit in the coffee house, have drinks, and then go do coffee. One day we show up full of Germans. My mom says, "Uh-oh, we're in trouble. The Allies are not coming to Venice." So she got us an apartment, went to Rome and got us an apartment in Rome. So if the Allies are not coming our way, we're going to go toward them. So we moved from Venice to Rome and found an apartment that we rented from a fascist who knew what was happening. He and his mother escaped to Switzerland, and we rented their apartment. And that's where we were liberated.
Lou, I have so many questions. I just have thousands of questions. Can I ask you for a big favor? Would you come back? I want to do part 2 of Lou, from what your life was like to where you are now. You are so interesting. I'm just, I mean, I have all these questions I want to ask.
Well, a lot of it.
Well, for instance, it's like you're going from an apartment to an apartment. Did you ever see how the money was exchanged? Did you ever see what was done? How did people work? What did your mother ever have to open up the heel of her shoe to?
I'm sure she did.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I'm sure that's what saved us.
Yes, of course, and it's just incredible. I mean, it really fast. I need to know. So, how did you meet the missus?
Well, how did I meet her? Anyway, long story, and this is the story of my mom met my stepfather after Rome was liberated. My parents divorced.
Your parents divorced.
Divorced.
After everything they went through.
Well, it's a long story, but it's I don't know. I can't put it in short.
Sure.
Anyway, they divorced. My mom met my stepfather, who was in the Navy. He's originally born in Croatia, from a little island in Croatia. His father was a fisherman with a tuna fleet in San Diego.
No.
And so when Frank, my stepfather, was like 12 years old, my grandfather brought him from this little fishing village in Croatia to San Diego. He went to San Diego High. He went to USC on a football scholarship. All in the meantime, he was in the reserve. So when the war broke out, he was a lieutenant in the Navy. Mm-hmm. He met my mom in Rome. Love at first sight. They got married. And are you sitting down?
Oh, I'm sitting so down. Let me get
my
the seat
mom,
double seat
coming
belt.
from my grandfather, who was an observant Jew, as she said, he put the tefillin every morning. She had the certificate that she was Catholic. She was married in the Vatican, in St. Peter's.
No.
Because Frank was Catholic.
Oh my God.
So she came to San Diego. My dad took me back to Zagreb, and I spent 3 years there. In 1948, he emigrated to Israel. I went with him. I stayed in Israel for 7 years. My mom finally got me to come from Israel to San Diego. And I came, as I was just barely 21, I came to San Diego. Okay, didn't have a high school diploma, didn't speak English too well, thick accent, didn't have a citizenship, didn't have a security clearance, so I could work, and so I joined the United States Air Force.
My gosh.
I served in the United States. I got discharged. In the meantime, I got a car, I got the citizenship, I got its clearance, I got my high school diploma through GED test. I came back to San Diego, and I started at San Diego State on I enrolled in the physics department. I was majoring in physics. Well, I dated a girl from Virginia just this summer, and she was supposed to go back at the end of the summer, and she said, I have a girl that since I'm leaving, this was a summer romance, summer dating. She says, I want to introduce you. Well, she actually met Lenore in Balboa Park on a Sunday when they had the folk dancing. On every Sunday they had the folk dancing. There was a man that asked her to dance, and she danced with him, And then she went back, and he says, "Oh, you're new here from New York." He says, "Well, my aunt. You got to meet my aunt." So she met her aunt, who was related to her father in New York, and they were relatives. That she was supposed to meet her, and the girl that I was dating was there, and so she gave her name to me, and I picked up. I dated her one time, and then all three of us, till she left, went together.
Wow.
So that's how we
And that's your wife.
connected. And 3 months later, we were married.
2 children.
And then I graduated finally. Well, Tony was born, our son was born in San Diego.
Okay.
I graduated and I went to work in Newport Beach. And Nina was born in Newport Beach.
Any grandchildren?
Nina lives in Italy, in Florence.
Oh my gosh.
She's married. She's married to Paula, she's gay. Paula is British, and they're happy as can be. They're just wonderful couple.
Awesome.
Tony had a bad marriage, but he had 2 boys.
Okay, so you're grandpa.
I'm a grandpa. They adopted a little Chinese girl,
Nice.
Julia, who is now 15. One boy went to Tufts, graduated. He's been working now for a year or year and a half. And the other one is ready another year. He's going to finish college.
Wow. Lou, you're amazing. I just,
I'm
you
lucky.
are so amazing.
I'm lucky. I was lucky. My life has been.
First of all, I want to thank you for this incredible book. What I want to do is to give you our El Sol magazine, which is from our
I would.
from the college.
Thank you.
Please, you can read about my mom and her experiences.
Thank you so much.
We at Our Lives, Our Future really want to thank you so much. I want you to come back. I hope that when our exhibit opens up, we have this beautiful auditorium, and we're going to have the Lou Pechi show, if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
Lou, thank you so much. Let's wave to our audience. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Klezmer in die Tatzen, wer wird Tatzen mich schatzen? Oi, oi, Gott ist größer, hat doch gewünscht mein Häuser, die mir sind gegeben, Häuser, die mir sind ausgegeben, die mir sind ausgegeben. Starker Fröhlich, ich die Malke, du der Melech. Oi, oi, ich allein hab mit meinen Augen gesehen, wie Gott hat mir Matzelig gewinnt, die mir sind ausgegeben, die mir sind ausgegeben.